to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how chronic pain affects your marriage. My guest Janice knew she was a controlling wife and sometimes downright cruel, but she had no idea how to stop. Early on, there was always tension at their house, punctuated by her husband's angry outbursts. Then she learned how to take a different approach, and today she is thrilled to feel emotional stability within herself and a culture of peace, comfort, and mutual respect in her marriage. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. That's coming up. But first, let's talk about how chronic pain affects your marriage. As you already know, if you have chronic pain or if your husband does, it can put a big strain on your marriage. When one of you is always hurting, it's an ever-present challenge to emotional and physical intimacy. Just like when you're sick, it's very hard to be at your best when you're going, ouch, 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 all day. And it can interfere with receiving or giving physical affection, which is frustrating, and it can make you lonely on top of everything else. And if you're not sure how that pain is ever going to be alleviated, that can be very discouraging and leave you feeling guilty that you're not able to be the kind of wife you want to be, and hopeless that you'll ever have a happy marriage. So much seems out of your control. It's hard to know what you can ever do to improve the situation, especially if your marriage feels like it's unraveling already. So how can you even begin to fix your marriage when that's happening? Well, here are 3 ways. Number 1, give yourself remedial self-care. If you're in pain, and you have been for a while, you may already be laying low or having to rest more than you'd like, and that can make you feel guilty. You may have a whole list of shoulds that you'd be doing if you weren't hurting. But what if you instead walk straight into putting the time, energy, and resources you do have towards things that bring you relief? Guilt be damned. When I'm sick or hurting in some way, I consider it a sign that I need remedial self-care, like a break from my responsibilities, lots of rest, great nutrition, the care of a professional, and a marathon of mindless home remodeling shows. Maybe you're already spending time and energy on whatever you can do to give yourself relief, and maybe that makes you feel even more guilty. Granted, you probably don't want to spend your whole life on the couch watching TV, but it's certainly a way for me to show myself love, to be responsive to my physical state. And if I'm not showing myself love, that's a pain all its own. I'm not going to be in much of a position to receive it from anyone else, including my husband. Sometimes remedial self-care feels like exactly what the doctor ordered. Number 2, focus on what feels good. Chronic pain has a way of grabbing your attention. It's always there saying, you can't forget about me. So the idea of focusing on what's feeling good may sound bonkers. It's the equivalent of hitting your thumb with a hammer, and instead of swearing, saying to yourself, boy, these 9 other fingers feel so good. Who does that, right? It's completely counterintuitive, if not downright crazy. And as a mere mortal woman, I do my share of cursing when hammer meets thumb. But I'm also a huge believer in the power of counting my blessings instead of my curses. I've done both. I've given a lot of focus to my problems, and I've tried listing all the things I'm grateful for. And I'd much rather live at the end of the gratitude list than the end of my problems list. These days, I'm really picky about what I focus on because what I focus on increases. So my question for you, and it's something I ask myself again and again, is what's feeling really good right now? And how can I give myself more of that? It takes something to change my focus like that, especially if I'm used to focusing on what's wrong, which sometimes feels like the default. But it's well within my power. although not always within my comfort zone, to change the channel and have a completely different experience, a better experience. I think of that expression, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. When I'm steeped in all the things I'm grateful for, my energy becomes more attractive to everyone around me, especially my husband. Doesn't that make you want to do a quick gratitude list right now? Maybe just 5 things that feel good? Me too. Number 3, receive, receive, receive. If you're feeling less self-sufficient and more dependent on, or even like a burden on your husband because of chronic pain, that can be its own source of guilt or shame. Nobody wants to feel like a burden. But what if instead of berating yourself for not being able to do all you wish you could do, you relaxed into being a great receiver? So what do I mean by that? Well, if your husband is doing extra heavy lifting because of your chronic pain, then that means he's contributing to your life, your family, and your health in a way that feels purposeful and important to him. Without your receptivity, he would not have that purpose. I think of that coffee cup analogy I learned years ago from a comparative religion student who told me that every object has the properties of yin and yang, like a coffee cup, where the structure is the yang or the masculine. So that's the ceramic part, right? Or the metal part or whatever it is that forms the cup. The yin or the feminine is the part that can hold the coffee. And without the part that receives the coffee, the cup would have no purpose. If your husband seems resentful about your chronic pain or the responsibility he takes on as a result of your limitations, it could be that he doesn't feel appreciated. That's happened around here too, when I was too afraid to acknowledge and thank him because I thought I'd be calling even more attention to my inadequacies. But when I finally became willing to receive and appreciate all he does for me, I not only felt cherished and adored, he felt proud and happy to take care of me. So it's interesting to think about what might happen if you gave up the guilty, defensive posture you might have taken on around chronic pain and instead became a gracious receiver with lots of appreciation for him. Because in my experience, receiving well is not only the essence of femininity, it's also a way of giving. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. My guest Janice knew she was a controlling wife and sometimes downright cruel, but she had no idea how to stop. Early on, there was always tension at their house, punctuated by her husband's angry outbursts. Then she learned how to take a different approach, and today she is thrilled to feel emotional stability within herself and a culture of peace, comfort, and mutual respect in her marriage. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Janice, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on. I can't believe, like I said, I'm speaking to you. It's an honor, truly an honor.
Well, I would love to hear about how things were going in the bad old days. What were they like?
Well, Dan and I met in college and we got married young. We started our family right away. And it wasn't really the bad old days. It was the bad old first 10 years of our marriage. It was a long time. They weren't bad. They were just, it showed me who I really was. I was who I always said I didn't want to be, which was a lot like the home and the woman that I was raised by. So I guess I could say I came by it honestly. My mom, I learned how to be a wife by watching my family. And I married a man exactly like my dad, which was a gift to me looking back on that. I had a wonderful father, but my mom was controlling, and it was her way or the highway, as the proverbial saying goes. Some stories about growing up, I remember her putting big black X's on food. And if we touched it, it was, get out of my stuff, just different things that we had a certain way of living in that house. And so you come by things honestly. You learn to be who you are by who trained you. So I'm so grateful for women in my life, though. I attend church regularly, and a lot of women in church did it the right way. And I didn't know at the time to ask them, what did you do? How are you making this different in your life? But they spoke into my life, and I would be, with little children, and they would tell me how to maybe do this differently with the kids or that differently. And then I would complain to them about my husband, and they would say, well, if you want him to do something different, you have to let him. I'm like, well, what does that mean? I have to let him, raise my kids the way that they should be raised differently than what he's currently doing. I think he should do this and not that. And so I didn't understand. I knew what they were saying. I wanted what they were saying, but I didn't know how to do it. So
it's doubly frustrating in a way, right?
It is.
You're like, what are you talking about? I don't even, it doesn't compute really. So,
do this, but how? That was my always question. How can I do it differently? This is the only way I know to do it. Yeah. We had 5 kids. We homeschooled. I worked part-time outside the house, not a lot, just a little bit. So I read the book, The 5 Love Languages. And honestly, it really was helpful in a way, because it told me that I needed to tell my husband, I need you to do acts of service. You're a grown man. You're the only other adult in this home. So when you come home and you see dishes everywhere, laundry everywhere, kids that need to be put to bed, and clothes that need to be folded and put away, and all the things, you need to just do it. But when he wouldn't, it just felt like I was given the permission to sanction like nagging, because my love language was acts of service, and you need to do it. And if you don't see it, I get to tell you how and when. And it helped in a way, but it didn't still tell me how to do it so that he would receive it any kind of way positively. So that was really hard. And it was, a gift and a curse at the same time, just added to some frustration. It did also feel like we danced around the same arguments over and over and over. It was almost like you could push play, and he would make this dance move, I would make that dance move, and I just didn't know how to step out of the dance. Right. I didn't know. Right. So he would constantly get upset if I interrupted him. He'd be saying something to me, and I would already know where he's going. So I would just say the end of the story, and he would be like, can you let me finish my thought? And I'm like, well, if I know where you're going, you don't need to finish, And I had no idea how disrespectful that was. Plus, my girlfriends never cared. We would, I have conversations with my girlfriends. We finish each other's sentences. We go,
yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. We would, joke. She reads my mind. Why can't you, those kind of things. And yeah, men and women are different. Hello, but I didn't know how those differences played out in relationship. So another thing was I didn't receive well at all. He would buy me gifts, and I would find a way to either not use them in the home or return them and exchange them for something else, or not wear the bracelet that he bought. I still have a bracelet that's in the packaging. And thankfully, it's now my daughter's birthstone, so I'll give it to her. But, I just didn't even recognize that receiving well showed him I loved him. I just had no concept. And again, I grew up in a home where I had to be very self-sufficient. I had to do what I needed to do for myself. There wasn't really someone to come alongside and help me. So I learned to be very independent, very self-sufficient. So, it's how it was. So another thing was I was always, again, and I think it comes with being controlling. I was always on his paper. I always was telling him how to do things and how I needed it done to function better, and driving, of course, the infamous why are you going this way? Why aren't you going that way? And, oh, you should slow down now, And he's a grown man. And frankly, I've been in more car accidents than he had been. So what made me not believe he was a wonderful driver, all these things. So I have one funny story to share about my being helpful ways. And honestly, it did help in a way, but we actually met in college and we worked in the same occupation. And there was a time when I was pregnant with one of my children and I wanted to work part-time, and he was the manager. They called them site coordinators at his office. And I worked 2 days a week with him and he was my boss, which was wonderful. And at the office, something needed to be done a certain way. Here I am pregnant, many times when you're expecting a baby, your brain isn't always firing clearly at times. So he would tell me, at this office as the site coordinator, I need to tell you that this needs to be done this way. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. No problem. I'll do it that way. So then we would get home and I would ask him, why did you fold the towels that way? They don't fit in the cupboard well. And this had been an ongoing, we'd been married 6, maybe 7 years at this time. It had been an ongoing thing. And I thought, can't he just fold the towels the right way? I mean, it's a simple request. So finally, one time he was helping me fold the laundry because he's a wonderful person. And I had learned to speak that I have needs of, acts of service. Yeah. And he started folding the towels in the way he would fold the towels. And I said, I just have to tell you, as the site coordinator of this location, I need you to fold the towels this way so the office works well. He cracked up laughing. Actually, It was kind of a funny, silly thing, but it kind of gave me hope, because if I just knew how to communicate in a way that he would understand, he was more than wonderful about anything, I just didn't know how to tell him anything. I had no idea.
So as the girl of fun and light, you were being playful and light.
I was being playful. And I didn't know that's why he responded so well.
Right. Right. Did. It just seems random, right? Because you don't know exactly where these levers are. So you're like, okay, that was lucky. That worked.
Exactly. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. He would always tell a story about when I was, again, pregnant with one of our other children. And I was just pushing every button that he had, not knowing it, but not knowing it. And I egged him on to punch me. Just being foolish, being young and, tired and exhausted and all the things that come along with, it was around the same time of the year. I was, holidays were coming and he punched a glass door. Instead, he never would hurt me ever. And I just pushed him to such degrees. And looking back now, many of his angry outbursts were my fault. In a way, I just pushed him, and such control, such humility for him to harm himself and not me in those moments, So
this is incredible accountability, though, Jen, the way you're telling this story, because you could easily come on here and say, my husband had anger issues. He punched a door one time. Right. So it's just something to hear you say that, to own your part. Of course, you're not responsible that he punched the door, but it sounds like you're clear that the things you were doing and saying were creating this tension, creating hostility, and it needed an outlet, and that's the outlet it came with. So this is just incredible to hear, because I think so often we hear that story told from a victim place, and you're no victim in your marriage. It sounds like.
Yeah, I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I was doing wasn't getting me there, but I had no idea how. I was always reading books, self-help books. I am a follower of Jesus, and so I read the Bible, and I knew there were character traits that I should exemplify as a Christian, as someone who follows God, and I just couldn't get out of my own way. I had no idea in many ways. So it was such a slow progression of whittling away wrong ideas, wrong teaching, wrong perspectives, as you often say. I always would expect something to go one way and it ended up going another. And I would sit down and try to untangle the mess that I often had created for myself. And so as as my kids got older, we moved to a different home where the towels could be folded anyway and it would fit in the cupboard. More cupboard space.
Ooh, the freedom. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
It's like, oh, you have 3 hall closets now. They can go wherever they want. We were married already 20 years at that point. And our life completely changed. It did a full 180. I don't know if it would be a 90 or 180, but we ended up leaving our jobs and become missionaries into a third world country. So we live between America and Africa. And so we're there for like 18 months, and then we come back to the States for 4 to 6 months at a time. And so you can imagine the stress that creates.
Oh, yeah.
Like international moves every 6 months or
oh my
every
gosh.
18 months. And then we don't have a home in the States. So the home we have in the other country is the only home we have, and just all of the tension. And so we were doing what we knew to do. I mean, divorce was never a word that we would ever have used. We said there is a D word in our marriage, and it's death, whether by natural causes or by otherwise. And we would
Homicide's always an option. Okay.
not that we ever made that, of course, no. But so kind of, I mean, it is an extreme scenario that we found ourselves in.
Yeah.
Living in a third world country, but talk about spectacles. Talk about, we are blessed. We are, what could we possibly complain about? Like the area that we actually find ourselves ministering in is very rural bush, and they don't have electricity, running water, and all the things. And then all the dynamic of the relationships that will bring. And just the lack of dignity in their culture, and just a lot of different things that we had to work through. And it really did cause my husband and I to have some really deep conversations about, why are we finding ourselves in the situations that we're constantly finding ourselves in? And physical intimacy was hit and miss, and for logistical reasons, living when we would come to the States, living in other people's homes, and all of the craziness that would bring. So one of the times that we came home, I think this was honestly not that long ago, maybe 2019 or something. I don't remember the dates, but a very close person in my life was going through a lot of marriage struggles, and it was breaking my heart that I didn't know how to help her. And so I started looking online, and of course you come up with all these things. I did find another person, and they gave a lot of great advice of what to do, and like what you need to be, but know how. And it honestly focused a lot on the dysfunction and a lot of what the problems are. So it almost gave like an impossible scenario of, well, you're in this problem, and well, you have to do. Yeah, it felt very hopeless to her and to me, reading it and looking through this. But it didn't say, when you find yourself in this situation, this is how you can come outside your own typical dance. You can step outside of the dysfunction and you can change what you're doing. She never learned how. So I then found the Surrendered Wife book. And of course, not many people will these days respond well to surrendered, which brilliant for you to change it to empowered, but they're the same thing. If you are empowered, it's because you've learned to surrender. And if you're surrendered, you feel empowered. It's like two sides of the same coin, but first impressions mean something. So I actually bought 5 books, 2 of one and 3 of the other. I gave them all away except for one. I had bought the ebook first, read the whole ebook, and then bought 5. And I try to keep a tribe around me, just of people who help me be accountable and people I can be vulnerable with that know me and my husband, actually. But in any event, so half of them were so offended. They were like, excuse me? And then the other half were curious, but not in the position where they felt the need. And since then, I mean, it's been years now, but incredibly helpful in so many ways because it told me how. It gave me tools to use to change situations in my life. And so that began my journey of really succeeding in creating the marriage that I'd always wanted and the goals that I had. It was like unbelievable. And I mean, I kind of have listened to your podcasts many times. So I wanted to share a few of the ways what I had done.
Please. Yes. What
The
did you
biggest
do?
one was duct tape, like massive pieces across my mouth. I did not have to say everything that came to my mind. And again, I'm a fast thinker, I'm a fast talker, and it comes quickly and it comes fast. And I used to joke to my husband and say, if I said everything that was coming to my mind, you would be really proud of the reserve that I exhibit regularly, because I don't say everything. And he would go, so what you do say is a portion, like he would joke.
Like, how much is in there? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, please don't take that as a permission to say everything you're thinking. A lot of duct tape, a lot of I hear you. Again, you've come up with so many, so easily implemented, brilliant tools to use, just simple things that aren't simple to use, but are simple things that you can use. Just because in the moment, sometimes you're so emotionally, charged that you have to almost be in a pattern of habitual referring back to things that come through your mental side, not your emotional side. So it took some time. It definitely took a little bit of time.
Now, did you ever feel like, well, duct tape, that means my opinion is not getting out. Like my opinion doesn't count, or like, why should I, I think of Edith Bunker, right? Stifle yourself or whatever. Like, did you ever feel like you were stifled?
Honestly, when I didn't say things at the time where it could become escalated, I found that the stability that it created gave me time to have my voice heard in a calm scenario. So, no, I never felt stifled. I felt stifled only in the sense of, why don't I have the right to say what I want to say in the moment that I want to say it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result. So I was saying, okay, I'm in an insane dance. Let's just step out and create one that has some safety in it, which was hugely improving everything. So no, and again, I understand why people would think that. Well, if I hold myself in and don't say it, well, when does my turn come? And again, first of all, it's really selfish to think I have to have my turn when I want it,
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to get out of the emotional side and get to the logical of it. But that helped me. The duct tape helped me. It actually made me realize when I emotionally lashed out, it isn't really what I wanted to say anyhow. And if it was, maybe it was what I wanted to say, but it wasn't how I wanted to say it. So
okay.
It gave me time to really process what I wanted in an intellectual, or I don't want to say intellectual, but not in an emotional, like overreactive. It allowed me to respond and not react.
It reminds me of that expression, say what you mean, but don't say it mean.
Perfect. That's yeah.
Yeah. So you're able to say it in a more kind way or a more dignified way.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay, great. So this is duct tapes, and I hear you. How did your husband respond when you started doing this?
Honestly, we were 28? You were 33 years married just in October, so celebrated 33 years. So he was so used to me doing things a certain way. And he would respond to me like I had done it the other way, even though I didn't. And then that was a temptation to be like, didn't you see what I didn't do there? So
Yeah.
It took a little time for me to just, again, keep the duct tape on, don't rip it off, and say, by the way, didn't you see me refrain in that moment?
Yeah. Did you notice how restrained I was about not saying what a jerk you're being right now, or what an idiot, right? Yeah.
Exactly. But then after a while, when he'd be like, wait a minute, that isn't the dance step that I'm used to seeing. And so he responded amazingly, like wanted to learn the new me, or appreciated the new way that things were happening, realized there's dead airspace right now. I can actually continue my thought. I can continue my sentence. and not be interrupted. Like he would kind of start something and then pause, and then he would continue and then pause, waiting for me to interrupt, I guess.
Like, this is your thing where you come in.
Like, I'm so used to just being interrupted. I'm just making space for you.
That's your cue.
So finally, I mean, like I said, I trained him in a certain way, and it wasn't what I wanted. And again, it was realizing I caused eggshells, that I kept saying, I'm so sick of stepping on eggshells, when I'm the one that dumped them all over the floor, not even knowing it was the case. Ugh. So, yeah, honestly, another thing that he responded amazingly to, which was just staying on my own paper, like showing him confidence in the fact that you're a grown man and you're a very capable, extremely humble, kind person, and just letting him do what he knows is the right thing to do in the moment, and not questioning everything he does or suggesting a better way or a more efficient way, or, and I'm still working on this one. This one's probably one of the biggest struggles I still have. I'm a paperwork person. I love numbers and all of those things, the behind the scenes, like administrative stuff. And in the calling in our life right now, there's a lot of that. And I mean, we're basically, self-employed, if that's a way to say it. And so that isn't his gifting. He's much more personal, relational, and, a lot of that. And so I often would want to say, so have you called them back? Have you messaged them? And it's definitely not helpful. So, something I'm still working on, though, staying on my own paper.
What do you do when you're thinking, I wonder if he called them back? Like, he needs to call them back. And what do you do like if you don't say it?
I know a lot of times I just pray. I believe firmly in the power of prayer. And then I just kind of think through the scenario. Well, what if he doesn't? Well, what if he doesn't do that? Is it still going to be okay? Are mountains going to fall? Is something going to happen bad? And then I realized nothing bad will happen. Part of it is I don't want him to look bad. I don't want people to think that, he's not getting back to them because he's disorganized or, any of those things. But again, it's his life and he can choose to do what he wants to do. And honestly, he does get to it. It's just not in my time frame.
Right. I can relate to that. Yeah.
He has like a weekly office time, and then I would have an hourly office time.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Daily and hourly and minutely office time. Yeah.
So I just have to stop and realize it's going to be okay. He's a grown man and he's lived this long, again, I feel like I'm saying that over and over again, but it's true. He's an adult, capable, wise person.
Which is probably why you married him.
Yeah, I'm confident that's why I married him.
Yeah. So how did he respond when you stopped reminding him to call that person? And
I think part of him likes me being efficient, and part of him appreciated that side of it. So I'm kind of learning to thread the needle as far as, where I'm appreciated to do some things and where it's not appreciated. And so that's really just been opening a lot of conversation, which now, because we have safety and we don't do the, accusatory dance anymore, or the struggle of, power rising up dance, whatever you want to call it. We can have those conversations, and I can say to him, would you like me to do this and this and this? And he'll say yes and no. And it works really well. So it's great.
Sounds so simple. Sounds so logical, right? But but I can relate to, we couldn't get there before either. So I totally get it. Well, anything else? Any other?
Yeah, I realized that apologizing went so far, and I'll never forget the first time I apologized. I told him that I wanted to apologize for being disrespectful when I interrupted him so often in the vehicle. We would drive and he would be talking and I would just say something, and we were driving when I gave him the apology, and he just said, thank you. Just simply said, thank you. So that really was, I was wondering how he would react to that. And
were you expecting him to say, oh no, you weren't disrespectful, or? Or were you
Part of
expecting?
me was hoping he would say
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
something that couldn't possibly be disrespectful, could it?
I know. I know, right?
So
Yeah. Yeah.
examples of times when I was disrespectful were very helpful, only because then it really made him realize that I wasn't just blasé saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for this," and he realized that I was genuine and sincere, and.
Mm.
So another
So
thing that
sweet.
what?
So sweet. I love
Oh,
that that's speaking of humility, right? It's a lot of humility to not only issue the apology, but to reference the specific
yeah,
actions or words.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah, I bet he loved it.
he really has loved it. He even said, I guess it was maybe, I don't know, 6 months ago, we were talking to somebody and he said, honestly, I feel like the last few years of our marriage has been the best it's ever been. And I guess I wasn't expecting him to acknowledge it out loud. I know, yeah. But just to hear him say it just in casual conversation, knowing that it wasn't something that we had to have these big State of the Union addresses with each other to have created what we have now. And it was just simple, small changes with tools that are effective. Like another one was just I don't know how exactly to say it. I do. Have you ever heard of doing a word of the year instead of?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do that around here. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So each year for the last probably 5 years, I've had a word of the year, and it's been wonderful. And it gives me a really neat way to share with him different things that have happened in my life. And this year, I chose the word dignity.
Oh,
And he said, "Why did you choose dignity?" And I said, "I guess because this journey that I feel like I've been walking for the last several years has made me feel like I have dignity." And he didn't quite know what I was referring to. And I said, "Well, when I don't feel like I have to apologize all the time for things, and I feel like when I show up somewhere, I'm showing up as my best self. I'm showing up as a person who I'm able to respect and not feel like, oh, why did you do that? Why can't you stop doing that?" Another struggling, problematic relationship has been with my mom and my brother. And because I don't live in the States all the time, I feel like my time with them is so limited. And I felt bad because I didn't want to be around them a lot because I always felt like it ended up in an argument. It always felt like it ended up without any positive, peaceful time with them. And it just was like, oh. And then since implementing skills that you've delineated so clearly in your books, I can spend time with them and I feel clean when I leave. And sometimes they implode, sometimes I feel like literally I've just had word vomit thrown on me.
oh,
And it
yeah.
sounds horrible. I know it's such a picture, but I leave clean. I leave without feeling like, oh, Jan, you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done that. And it's so wonderful. And now I feel like I can have dignity in that relationship, those relationships. So
Well, and it
that's
sounds like even though it's not perfect, I mean, no relationship is perfect with your mom or your siblings, but it sounds like you're at least getting to enjoy
yeah,
the limited time that you have with them. There's more connection. Uh,
absolutely. Yes.
and you feel good when you leave instead
Yeah.
of yeah, I can just relate to like being with somebody I love and then
Yes.
thinking like I never want to do
Absolutely.
that again. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to, yeah, I'm not going to see them for a while. Yeah. So, and
And I think part of what I had to recognize is, and again, duct tape in place, they may never know me fully because I think there's not that vulnerability. I can't open myself up because I don't feel like they can be trusted in certain ways with certain things. And that was a hard lesson learned. Not
yeah.
everybody can be in full relationship with everybody else. You have to know who you can trust and who you can't trust with the inner thoughts and emotions of your being, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It doesn't feel safe to be vulnerable with them
yeah,
at
but
this,
it does with my
this stage.
husband. And sometimes if that's the only relationship in the moment, it's enough. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
yeah.
huge, right? To have any relationships where you feel, yeah, we all need to be heard, seen, known, understood.
Yes.
And it sounds like you are feeling that way with your husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much so.
Yeah. Well, you implemented a lot of skills in your marriage. So you sound like a really dedicated student of the
Yeah.
intimacy skills, which I
Yeah.
love. Um, is there what's your relationship like now? What is your marriage like?
I debated on sharing this, and I don't want to be. I talked to my husband about it, and I think he shared it, so I feel like I can. There's so much safety. Truly, just that's the only word that you can use. And often, my husband will get in his own head, and he'll start kind of like this downward spiral. And I felt like I didn't. I sort of felt like it was my responsibility to kind of help him pull it out of him, pull him out of that, or I just didn't know how to manage it. I just didn't know. And I felt horrible. Like he's just in his own head and he's questioning himself and questioning his, abilities and all the different things. And he's wonderful. I mean, I've given my kids, 3 of our children are married, and I've given them like testimony that honestly, your parents probably wouldn't still be together, but we are, because your father has loved me. He straight up just has loved me through, like what I had told you. At times I was cruel, downright cruel. I have a joke that I say, if you if you ever want to have a good marriage with someone who will never let go of you, find someone who has a favorite football team that never wins. They're loyal fans, and they'll be loyal to you. So, but one day we were talking and he was kind of going in a downward mental spiral, and I asked him, can I tell you something? And he said yes. And I said, it's just not attractive to me when you get that way. And he stopped and he heard me, and he really, but he didn't get mad, and he didn't like, I can't believe you said that to me. And I did preface it with, I don't want to hurt you, but I really feel like I need to tell you this. And he heard me though, and he didn't get offended. It did hurt, but it wasn't because I was hurting him. It hurt because he recognized something in himself that he didn't like either. So that alone just was so amazing to realize that we have this open. He tells me things too about me, and I can hear him and not feel like he's trying to hurt me intentionally. He's genuinely speaking into my life something that he wants to see changed or helped in my life. So that's a really, really neat thing to have that. Like we are on the same team kind of thing. So,
Oh,
and at times he's the coach and at times I'm the coach, but we're on the same team. And that's
oh.
really, really great.
So there's so much emotional safety now that you can say these things that are kind of risky
Yeah.
and would have maybe previously started a fight, it sounds like, or started some hostility or tension.
Absolutely would have come out in an emotional, blah kind of
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
like
With a
that.
loss of dignity, a
A
loss of
lot of
dignity.
loss of dignity. Yes. A lot of
Yeah,
apologizing. No
yeah,
duct tape.
yeah.
So,
Well, and so you have 5 children. So how do you think this new like these last few years, he says, have been the best years of your marriage?
yeah.
How do you think it's impacted them, or has it impacted?
Well, with 3 of them, again, we don't see them as much as we would like to, but with 3 of them married and the 4th one, the other 2 eventually will get married, I'm sure. Um, I think that just knowing their parents still love each other and have a good relationship, it gives them something to aim for. It gives them an example of, yes, this can be done. This thing of marriage is everything it's cracked up to be. And when we were young, we had a couple of people that we really looked up to. And I'm really, really grateful that we can be that for our own children now, and not the cautionary tale of some destructed, union. So
Yeah.
our kids,
Go ahead. Sorry.
one of them sent a message it was our anniversary in October, and they sent a message pretty much to that effect, which is really sweet to have read that.
Wow. So you got acknowledgement from one of your kids about, so this is what a great accomplishment to be able to be that lighthouse for your kids, to be that role model of what's possible, and to pass that down as your legacy must
Yeah,
feel
it does feel like
tremendous.
that, maybe, I guess, a legacy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
What do you think you would say if you could go back in time and tell yourself what you know now about your marriage?
I think that I would have to tell myself that the little things that you don't think matter do. Those little subtle things that you figure, I could just do that, it's not going to make a difference, or I don't have to do that, it isn't that big of a deal. They are big deals. They are extremely impactful. And there's two ways to die. One is by a, fatal stab wound, and another by 1,000 little cuts. So I think that that's what I was doing to my marriage, and I didn't even know it. And I would tell myself those little things make a difference. It's small little changes that make a difference.
And I think I hear, and I certainly saw it in what you wrote too, like some remorse or regret that you didn't know better before.
No, I didn't.
You didn't. And once you knew better, you did better.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a mix of, well, it's, pride, I would say, right? Like
absolutely, it all was there. Even sometimes I have like a personal manifesto. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but I love tribes. I love like surrounding myself with people who are like-minded and who have same values. And it's hard to find a tribe that stands for your marriage. It really is. And you've created such an amazing group of people that gives such support. And I just love that. And I love acronyms. So I kind of made an acronym out of God Tribe, because I'm a believer in God, and the tribes that I feel like I need to surround myself with are those that have that same core belief. And so I took each letter of GODTRIBE and made it with one word. It's a couple words, but words that apply to my relationships outward. There's relationships from God to me, and relationships from me outward to other people. That's kind of how I've organized it. And so like G is grateful, and O is on my own paper, and D is duct tape. So these are things, I've got it printed and I keep it in front of my eyes all the time. T is tenderhearted and take care of myself, take care of myself. Don't be foolish. R is receive well. I is integrity. B is be squeaky clean with accountability. And E is express desires in a way that inspires. So your books have really helped me create a personal manifesto for myself. And it's been something that's kind of been helpful to keep me where I want to be. It pushes me back to the center of things that I just have goals for myself in my life and how I want to act. So
beautiful. Wow, Janice. I love that. And yeah, congratulations on creating a better Janice, first of all. It's right. Like you've changed. And I certainly hear that you have more dignity. You sound more empowered, and happier, and more grateful, I think I hear too.
So much. That was one of my words of the year. Actually, that was the word of the year for 2021.
Oh,
Great.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you focused on that word for a whole year.
I did a whole year.
Yeah. What's your best tip for somebody who maybe is where you were, where they've got that dog and pony show where they just press play and then they do the same old dance and they're stuck in it, don't know how to get out of it, and would like to have what you have, where your husband goes around saying, the last couple of years have been the best years.
I really feel like people just need to know they can do it. It isn't impossible. It isn't like some unattainable brass ring that's just out of your grasp. It is possible, and it is something that you can have. It isn't just for the other people who, have the right spouse or the right home or the right job or the right anything. It is for anyone. Now, that's not to say it doesn't take some work. It takes some introspection. It takes some willingness to be vulnerable with yourself, be honest with yourself about how you show up and why you might show up in a way that you do. I told a friend that I no longer want to show up as Swiss cheese with all these holes that I'm expecting someone else to fill, that I need to show up whole. And the only way I can do that is to make sure I've done the hard work to be confident in who God has made me to be and in all those ways. So, yeah, you can do it.
I really hear the confidence that you've gained by putting in the time and the effort and the focus, the hard work, as you say, and really becoming your best self, this stable woman who's a role model for her grown children. And really, it sounds like just a pillar of the community too. You and your husband are making such a big contribution to the world in that way, right? Because the world depends on strong marriages in order to.
It does. Absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So congratulations on this tremendous achievement of your goal of really transforming your marriage and making it one that we'd all like to have, really.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing all the details, the personal details with us. And thank you to your husband too for allowing you to come on and speak about these matters that are so personal, so private, and yet so valuable to us to be able to see the inside of your marriage.
I just want to say thank you to you as well. You've done a lot of work. I know that you've done so much for many years, 20 plus years. I wish I'd found you when you wrote your first book. But it is a message that I am doing my best to share with others because it's so, so important. And I appreciate all that you're doing just to help women in my situation. And I'm a fan, just to let you know.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Great. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share 3 secrets for preventing an empty nest divorce, plus some statistics. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I started a new weight loss program 6 weeks ago, and so far I'm only up 2 pounds.